The city below glittered like liquid gold, a skyline built on ambition, arrogance, and billion-dollar dreams. On the top floor of the Haynes Global Tower, a private meeting was about to begin, a meeting that could change the course of one of the world's largest tech empires. Inside the glass-walled boardroom, silence ruled. 12 executives sat around a marble table polished to perfection. Laptops open, suits tailored to intimidate, and smiles sharpened like blades. At the head of the table sat Robert Haynes, the billionaire CEO, a man known for his ruthless precision and unmatched ego. He was about to close a $3.5 billion international media deal, one that would make headlines across Wall Street. Everything was going perfectly, until the elevator doors opened. In walked a man in a simple black jacket. No tie, no arrogance, no entourage. His walk was calm, his eyes thoughtful. The air in the room shifted. Some whispered, some frowned. It was Keanu Reeves. Robert glanced up, smirked, and whispered to his assistant loud enough for others to hear, "Why is an actor in my boardroom?" The assistant shrugged. "The partner company invited him, sir. They said he's consulting on ethics and branding." Robert chuckled, eyes rolling. Ethics from Hollywood? The room laughed with him, but Keanu didn't flinch. He simply took a seat at the far end of the table, not demanding attention, not seeking it either. Just being present. As the meeting began, presentations filled the screen. Charts, graphs, projections, all about profit margins, global dominance, and aggressive market control. Robert's voice dominated the room. "We own the narrative. We own the people who consume it." But Keanu's eyes said something else, a quiet disapproval. He flipped through the presentation pages, then looked up, his tone gentle but clear. "Can I ask something?" Robert leaned back, amused. "Sure, Mr. Movie Star, go ahead." Keanu's question was simple. "In all these slides about profit and control, where's the part about purpose?" A long pause. The room went still. The question hung in the air like a challenge, quiet yet impossible to ignore. Robert's smile turned to a smirk. "Purpose doesn't make billions, Mr. Reeves. Passion doesn't pay shareholders. Welcome to the real world." The boardroom laughed again, some nervously, others cruelly. But Keanu didn't laugh. He nodded slowly, as if noting something invisible. "Sometimes," he said softly, "the real world forgets what makes it human." No one expected that answer. The laughter faded. The silence deepened. Even the city noise below seemed to stop. Robert looked at him with growing irritation, a man not used to being questioned, especially by someone he saw as beneath him. He tapped his pen, dismissive. "Let's move on. We have real business to discuss." But as the next presentation began, something subtle changed. For the first time, the man who ruled every room looked uncertain, because somewhere deep down he knew. This quiet stranger was about to cost him everything. The meeting continued, but the atmosphere had shifted. Every time Keanu turned a page or scribbled a quiet note, Robert's jaw tightened. It wasn't what Keanu said, it was what he didn't say. His silence was too steady, too calm. Robert Haynes had built an empire on dominance. He was used to fear in the room, people agreeing before he finished speaking, eyes lowered, voices trembling. But Keanu just sat there, thoughtful, unbothered, and that was infuriating. Robert finally leaned back, smirking, his voice cutting through the tension. "Tell me, Keanu, what exactly qualifies you to be in this meeting? You act for a living, right? Pretend to be someone else?" The executives chuckled, that sycophantic laughter that always follows power. Keanu's tone remained gentle. "Sometimes pretending helps you understand the truth people hide from." The laughter died quickly. Robert frowned, clearly not expecting a reply that elegant. He changed tactics. "All right then, Mr. Philosopher. You think you know better than the people who built this company?" Keanu shook his head slowly. "Not better. Just different. Sometimes when you're too high up, you stop seeing what's real on the ground." A ripple moved through the boardroom. A few heads turned. Some eyes flickered with quiet agreement. Robert caught it immediately. He didn't like losing control. He clapped his hands once. "All right, everyone. Let's get back to work before the monk here gives us all an ethics lecture." The room laughed again. Louder this time, forced, cruel. Keanu smiled faintly, not out of weakness but out of understanding. He'd seen this kind of ego before, the kind that mistakes noise for power. The assistant brought in coffee for everyone. As she placed a cup in front of Keanu, Robert smirked again. Careful. That might be too strong for him. He's probably used to herbal tea and red carpets. Laughter again. But this time the tone was shifting. Some laughed because they had to. Others stayed quiet, uncomfortable. Keanu didn't react. He just lifted his cup, looked at Robert, and said quietly, "Bitterness usually comes from over-roasting." The laughter stopped. You could feel it, the sting behind the calm. The quiet revenge of wisdom. Robert's assistant looked down to hide a grin. The CFO bit his lip. Even the marketing head avoided eye contact. Robert's face hardened. "Let's stay professional, shall we?" he said sharply. Keanu nodded politely. Exactly what I was thinking. The next few minutes were filled with fake professionalism, graphs, profits, projections, but the energy had changed. The arrogance that once dominated the room was now cracking. Keanu looked at the charts again. "So this campaign," he said, tapping the screen, "it's built around envy, right? Making people feel less so they buy more?" Robert shrugged. "That's how the market works. Sell dreams, not morals." Keanu's eyes softened. "Funny thing about dreams. The best ones can't be bought." A heavy silence. Even the city seemed to fade out again, like the world was pausing to listen. Robert stood up, done pretending. "You know what, Keanu? You may be good at acting humble, but in the real world, humility doesn't win." Keanu looked up slowly, eyes steady. "Maybe not, but it never loses as badly as arrogance does." Robert turned away, hiding the flicker of anger that crossed his face. And as the projector light flickered across the boardroom glass, no one noticed the silent camera on the corner wall, recording everything, the same feed that would soon be sent to the partner company watching live. And with that unseen eye, destiny had already started writing the next scene. The meeting dragged on for another hour. Outside, the Los Angeles skyline burned in golden fire, the kind of sunset that makes even glass towers look humble. But inside the boardroom, humility was running out of air. Robert Haynes stood tall beside the projector screen, pacing like a man performing for applause. "Ladies and gentlemen, this is the future of global media," he declared, voice full of pride. "We control what people see, what they feel, what they desire. That's not business, and that's power." The executives nodded, half in fear, half in habit. Keanu listened quietly, pen resting between his fingers. He wasn't judging, he was observing. Every word Robert spoke revealed more about his empire's foundation and its cracks. Finally, Keanu raised his head. "What happens when the people you control stop trusting you?" The question hit like a cold wind. Robert frowned. "Trust? People don't need to trust us. They just need to buy from us." Keanu smiled softly. "Then your business model is built on sand." A faint murmur swept across the room. One executive shifted uncomfortably. Another avoided eye contact. Keanu leaned forward slightly, his voice calm, too calm. "You see, Robert, power without trust. It collapses the moment it's challenged." Robert slammed his laser pointer down. "You know what collapses, Keanu? Your career, if you keep preaching in my office." The laughter that followed this time wasn't loud. It was hollow, uneasy. Robert turned back to his slides, voice tightening. "Let's talk numbers, not philosophy. This deal alone will expand our reach into 6 new markets: China, Dubai, Berlin, London, New York, Tokyo. We're not here to be loved. We're here to be obeyed." Keanu quietly stood up, walked to the screen, and erased a section of the digital chart with one tap. He picked up the stylus, wrote 3 words on the glowing glass: people, purpose, promise. The room went silent. Those 3 words glowed like fire against the wall. Robert scoffed. "And what's that supposed to mean? A movie title?" Keanu turned slowly. "It's what every lasting brand stands on. People, the ones you serve. Purpose, why you exist. Promise, what you keep even when no one's watching." The silence after that was heavy. Even the faint hum of the air conditioner seemed distant. Robert's voice broke the spell, sharp and mocking. "Do you honestly think a few poetic words can replace billions in strategy?" Keanu smiled faintly. "No. But those words decide if your billions survive." One of the senior board members, an older woman, spoke softly. "He's right, Robert. We've lost good clients lately because of public distrust." Robert cut her off. "Enough." He turned to Keanu, face red, pride bruised. I didn't invite you here to lecture me on morality. Keanu's tone didn't change. You didn't, but they did. Robert blinked. What? Keanu nodded toward the large screen on the wall, the one connected to the video feed. The tiny red recording light blinked softly in the corner, unnoticed till now. Your global partners wanted transparency. They asked me to observe how you lead, how you treat people. I'm not here for a lecture. I'm here for a truth check. Robert froze. The room stiffened. Eyes widened. Whispers rippled like thunder in slow motion. Robert forced a laugh. You're joking. They wouldn't. Keanu looked at him calmly. You'll find out soon enough. He sat down again, expression peaceful, almost compassionate. The same calmness that had irritated Robert hours ago now terrified him. For the first time that day, the billionaire felt a flicker of fear. He looked at the blinking red light again, then at the faces around him. The eyes that had once feared him now uncertain, almost pitying. The meeting suddenly didn't feel like his stage anymore. It felt like a test, and deep down Robert Haynes already knew he had failed it. The silence in the boardroom was sharp enough to cut through glass. Every eye flicked between the glowing red light on the wall and Robert's face, a face that had finally begun to show something he'd never displayed before. Fear. Robert's throat tightened. He forced a smile that looked more like a twitch. So what, Keanu? They asked you to spy on me? Keanu's voice remained calm. They asked me to observe, not judge. What I share with them depends on what they see for themselves. The words landed like thunder wrapped in silk. Robert laughed, trying to regain control. You think a movie star's opinion will affect a $3.5 billion deal? Please. He turned to his team, voice rising. Let's stay focused. The partners from Tokyo are joining in 5 minutes. Everyone, prepare your final summaries, but no one moved. Not the assistant. Not the CFO. They were all staring at the same thing. The screen behind him, where the live conference window had quietly switched from connecting to connected. A quiet chime echoed through the room. The large display filled with faces. The global partner board, executives from Japan, Germany, and London. Robert straightened his jacket, fake confidence returning. Gentlemen, welcome. I'm pleased to confirm that all negotiations are ready for final signature. The man on the center screen, Mr. Watanabe, did not smile. His expression was calm, cold. Mr. Haynes, he began softly, we have been reviewing the live feed from your meeting today. Robert's eyes flickered. Of course, as expected. A small misunderstanding with an external consultant, but Mr. Watanabe raised a hand. No misunderstanding, Mr. Haynes. We saw everything. The temperature in the room seemed to drop 10 degrees. Even the hum of the AC felt louder than breathing. Robert tried to speak, but the words stumbled. With all due respect, that consultant, he doesn't represent our business culture. He does not need to, Watanabe interrupted. Your behavior represents it perfectly. A quiet gasp escaped from someone in the back of the room. Keanu remained silent, eyes lowered, posture calm. Watanabe continued, Our organization values humility, respect, and character. This deal was never only about numbers, Mr. Haynes. It was about alignment, moral alignment. Robert blinked rapidly. You can't be serious. We're talking billions. Yes, Watanabe replied evenly. 3.5 billion. And we do not spend billions partnering with arrogance. The call went silent. For 3 endless seconds, nothing moved. Not a chair. Not a sound. And then came the words that shattered Robert's empire. Effective immediately, Haynes Global is removed from our partnership consideration. The deal is terminated. Click. The call ended. The screen went black. The sound of a single pen dropping echoed through the room like a gunshot. Robert stood there, pale, eyes wide, the realization sinking in like ice water. 3.5 billion. Gone in less than a minute. Destroyed not by a competitor, not by a hacker, but by his own pride. He turned toward Keanu, voice breaking, disbelief in every word. You did this. Keanu shook his head slowly. No, Robert. You did this. They just saw who you really are. Robert's lips trembled. He looked around for support, but no one met his eyes. The room that once worshipped him now looked at him with pity, or worse, disappointment. Keanu stood, adjusted his jacket, and gently placed his notepad on the table. You thought you were testing me, he said quietly. But the real test was yours. Robert's knees weakened. He sank into his chair, staring blankly at the glowing black screen. The same screen that had just shown his empire crumble. Outside the boardroom window, the golden sunset had turned into deep red. The city lights flickered like dying stars. Keanu walked toward the exit. The assistant opened the door, still stunned, still processing what had just happened. Before leaving, Keanu turned back, not with pride, but with quiet empathy. Power is temporary, Robert. But how you treat people, that's what lasts. And with that, he walked out, his footsteps echoing in the heavy silence of a kingdom that had just fallen. The door closed softly behind him, and for the first time in his life, Robert Haynes, the man who thought he could buy respect, realized it was the only thing money could never afford. The door clicked shut behind Keanu, leaving behind a silence so deep it almost roared. Robert Haynes sat frozen, eyes locked on the black screen that had, only minutes ago, shown him his downfall. His empire, 3 decades of domination, deals, and headlines, collapsed not with an explosion but with a sentence. No one spoke. No one dared to move. The same people who once fought for his attention now stared at their phones, at the floor, anywhere but at him. Robert's assistant finally whispered, "Sir, what do we do now?" He didn't answer. His mouth opened, but only emptiness came out, and then the door opened again. Keanu Reeves stepped back in. Not with arrogance, not to gloat, but with the same quiet composure that had unnerved Robert since the first moment. Everyone looked up, confused. Robert's voice cracked. Why are you back?" Keanu stopped near the table, looked around the room slowly. The faces, the fear, the shame. "Because I didn't come here to ruin anyone," he said softly. "I came here to reveal something." Robert clenched his jaw. "Reveal? What else is left to reveal? You just cost me billions." Keanu's voice stayed steady. "No, Robert. You cost yourself billions. All I did was give the truth a stage." He turned to the executives. "You all deserve to know what really happened today." The team leaned forward, breath held. "Weeks ago," Keanu continued, "the partners you were negotiating with approached me. They had doubts. They'd heard rumors about how this company treated its employees, clients, and collaborators. They wanted to know if the man leading this empire was the kind they could trust." Robert's eyes narrowed. "So they sent you to test me?" Keanu nodded. "They didn't want a report. They wanted to see your character, unfiltered, real." The CFO swallowed hard. "You mean this entire meeting was being observed for behavior, not business?" "Exactly." Keanu's tone was calm, but his words hit like thunder. The deal wasn't about products or profits, it was about people. About integrity. About whether power had made you blind to humanity. Robert shook his head, disbelief mixing with rage. "That's not fair. I built this empire with my own hands. And you broke it with your own words." Keanu interrupted gently. "They wanted to see how you treated someone you didn't think could offer you anything." He paused, eyes meeting Robert's. And they saw it. The room was utterly still. Even the hum of the projector seemed to stop. Robert's breathing grew heavy. "So, you were never here as a consultant?" Keanu shook his head. "No, I was here as a mirror." Those words hit harder than any insult could. A mirror. That's all he had been, quietly reflecting everything Robert tried to hide. Robert sank into his chair again, the weight of realization pressing down like stone. For the first time, the mighty CEO looked small. Keanu continued, but his voice softened, no anger, just truth. "Do you know why they trusted me with this role, Robert? Because they knew I'd tell the truth without hate. They knew I wouldn't enjoy watching anyone fall." He took a step closer, his tone almost compassionate. "I don't take pleasure in what happened today, but I hope you see what they saw. That arrogance doesn't make you powerful. It just isolates you until there's no one left to defend you." The old board member, who had been silent since the call ended, finally spoke. "He's right, Robert. We tried warning you. The culture you created, it's been cracking for years." Robert's eyes filled with tears, silent, frustrated, unacknowledged. He wasn't used to feeling human. Not like this. Keanu placed his hand lightly on the table, his final words calm but heavy with meaning. "You don't lose billions when you lose a deal, Robert. You lose them when you lose your values. He turned to leave once more. Rebuild if you can, but this time start with respect, not pride. Robert watched him go, unable to speak. As Keanu reached the door, he paused one last time. The golden evening light filtered through the glass, framing his silhouette. He looked back and said quietly, "Humility doesn't make you weaker. It keeps you from collapsing under your own height." And then he was gone. For a long time, no one moved. The assistant finally exhaled, whispering under her breath. The man he called stupid just gave him the greatest lesson of his life. Outside, the city buzzed, unaware. Inside, an empire sat in silence, watching the dust settle where pride once stood. And in that silence, the truth echoed louder than any applause ever could. Morning sunlight crept through the towering glass windows of the Haynes Global headquarters. But this time the light felt different, colder, quieter. The building that once buzzed with confidence and power now echoed with whispers and uncertainty. 3 days had passed since the deal collapsed. The world already knew. The story had leaked, not just about the lost $3.5 billion partnership, but about why it was lost. News headlines screamed across every platform. Billionaire CEO humiliates actor, loses historic deal. Keanu Reeves exposes arrogance inside corporate empire. When kindness outsmarts power. Clips of the leaked meeting circulated everywhere. Robert's dismissive tone, his condescending smirk, and the moment Keanu calmly dismantled the illusion of superiority. In just hours, the world turned what was meant to be a business presentation into a moral story. Stock prices plummeted. Influencers quoted Keanu's words. Millions shared the clip, calling it the humility lesson of the century. And in the center of that chaos sat Robert Haynes, silent in his office, staring at his reflection in the glass not as a billionaire, but as a man stripped of his armor. He hadn't spoken to the press. He hadn't fired anyone. He just sat there watching the headlines burn his empire. That evening, a knock echoed through his office. The door opened slowly, and to everyone's surprise, it was Keanu Reeves. Robert looked up, stunned. "You came back again?" Keanu smiled faintly. "I came to check if the storm taught you something, or just left you wet." Robert exhaled shakily. "I've lost everything, Keanu. My company, my reputation. The world sees me as a monster." Keanu walked closer, resting his hand on the glass wall overlooking the city. "No, Robert. You lost illusions, not everything. What you do now decides whether this fall becomes your end, or your beginning." Robert's voice cracked. "You talk about beginnings like they're easy. I spent 30 years building this empire. And that's exactly why you need to rebuild it right this time." Keanu replied calmly. "Empires built on pride crumble, but those built on empathy last generations." Robert looked down, ashamed. "Why didn't you humiliate me publicly?" "You could have destroyed me completely." Keanu's eyes softened. "Because destruction doesn't teach. Reflection does. You didn't need punishment, Robert. You needed perspective." For a moment, the only sound was the low hum of the city outside. Robert slowly turned toward him. "What would you do if you were in my place?" Keanu smiled slightly. "I'd start by apologizing. Not to investors, but to people. The janitors, the assistants, the ones you stopped seeing as human." The next morning, the world witnessed something no one expected. A live stream appeared on Haynes Global's official channel. The thumbnail simply said, "A message from Robert Haynes." Millions tuned in. Robert stood alone on stage. No teleprompter, no PR team, no applause. Just a man facing the world he once looked down upon. His voice trembled, but his words carried weight. "I used to think success was about how high you could rise, but I forgot that real success is about how many you lift while rising." He paused, looking directly into the camera. "I judged a man I thought was beneath me. That judgment cost me billions, but it gave me something worth more: clarity." The comments section flooded instantly. Some mocked, but many listened. "I lost a deal, but I gained a truth. Respect is the only currency that never loses value." Robert's apology went viral. But this time the story wasn't about his fall, and it was about his change. Weeks later, the company reopened under a new initiative, Project Dignity, a foundation dedicated to training young leaders in emotional intelligence, workplace respect, and ethical leadership. And at the inauguration ceremony, Keanu Reeves stood quietly in the back, wearing his usual black suit. blending in with the crowd. When reporters noticed him, they rushed forward. "Mr. Reeves, what do you think of Robert Haynes's transformation?" Keanu smiled, calm as ever. "Sometimes the hardest battles are the ones you fight inside yourself." He fought his. That's worth respecting. The crowd applauded. Cameras flashed. But Keanu simply nodded, walked out, and disappeared into the evening, the same way he had entered this story. Quietly, humbly, leaving behind a lesson that would last far longer than the headlines. Months later, in a leadership seminar, a young entrepreneur asked Robert, "Do you ever wish you could go back and change that day?" Robert smiled faintly. "No," he said, "because if I hadn't lost everything, I'd have never found what really matters." He turned to the audience, quoting the man who changed his life. "Humility doesn't make you smaller. It makes space for greatness to grow." The crowd rose in applause, and somewhere, watching the clip from a quiet cafe in Los Angeles, Keanu Reeves smiled. Not because he won, but because the world finally understood what he'd been trying to show all along. Power fades. Kindness echoes forever.